when I have a cursor form, I can have my cursor and navigation bar. Probably the easiest way is I'll just show you what it looks like in the PDA. So open form 2, just to quickly show you on form 1. This button's action opens form 2. So I can have these expressions if I select from the drop down, or if I click the ellipsis, then I can select a form that I want to open. So that's how I'm getting to form 2, and I'll show you how that's working. So I'll click on form 2 in the PDA, and this is what a cursor form looks like. It has, by default, you get X out of Y in the title, and it's showing me some data there. This data has been synchronized. I've got a data file with this data in it, and I'm synchronizing this data from the BEP file running server. So that's how I've got this data here. All I've done before is I've just hit the synchronize button, and the synchronize button is enabling a sync rule, running the sync rule. So I'm synchronizing data here in real time, and so these two values that I have, John Smith and Joe Citizen, are appearing in the cursor. So I get all this functionality for free when I'm using a cursor form. I get the cursor navigation bar, where I can walk backwards and forwards. I can create new records. I can modify the records and save them. So data binding is very useful in form 2. Data binding is very useful to map what this is doing. This is mapping the UI elements, these edit fields, to sources coming from the data. The next thing I have to show you is the validation. Validation is for when I'm changing these values. If I can edit this value and make this change the name, I've got a funny kind of validation here to say if the edit field, so I'm editing edit field 2, the one you can see I'm changing there. Now I've got this funny rule: if edit field is not John and is not Joe, then I want to give a message. So it's just something I've contrived as a business rule or a validation rule. I've got in-place editing here, similar to what was shown before in the expression editor. This is really an expression editor cut down to just being one line. And if I run this logic and I hit the save button, I get an automatic message coming up for me, which is that validation rule firing, and it's firing just before I'm about to save. So the save has been cancelled, the save has been aborted. So it's actually not even possible for me to save this data that doesn't pass these validation rules, and that's what the validation rules are there to provide. I can have form variables. There's three levels of variables. There's variables at the form level. There's variables within the expression, local variables, and there are global variables. And the difference is their scope. If I want to pass data around within an expression, and that data is never going to leave that expression, then a local variable is the way to go. If I would like to pass data around a form but only within the forms, for example, if I need to pass data between expressions on the same form, then I would probably use a form variable. Otherwise, if I need to pass data between totally disconnected forms, or if I have global variables that affect every form, and I just want to have an easy access, I can have a global form there as well. A global variable there. The next thing I can show you are menus. So I'm just going to create a new form and use it to demonstrate a menu. So I have 1, 2, I can have another one here, and I can even have some sub-menus as well, like this. And if I just put another button here, that will take me to that form 3, and then I run it. I better shut this down first. So there are my menus, and I've got the sub-menu ability as well. Menus are like button clicks. I can assign them to have actions in the same way as a button click. So that wraps up the form editor as well as the table editor and the query editor. So the next one I have to show you is the sync rule. So this is the sync rule that we actually used in the demonstration just a while back to show you the data coming from the server to the client. So every sync rule must have a direction, either a download or an upload from client to server. Every sync rule, as well as a direction, must also use a query. So the query is being used in this particular case where I'm downloading from the server to the client. The query is being run on the server, query 1, and I can open the query directly from here using this button. The query 1 is being run on the server to select according to the condition, which is in this particular case is all records are going to be read on the server, and they're going to be packaged up and then sent to the client. So that's how we define a sync rule. And before I move on, I'm going to just show you one extra power of the query. I can make. I'm just going to rename this and call. I can make a parameterized query. And let's make it, instead of being conditionless, I'm going to put a condition on field 1 is equal to my parameter. I'm going to call that param1. So now I'm going to change sync rule from, instead of using query 1, I'm going to use param query. And as soon as I selected the param query, the parameters tab appeared, which is prompting me for input to give me a value to put into the parameter. And if I go onto the ellipsis button here, I get our data source tree, which is the same data source tree which was in the expression editor a while ago. And in this case, it's asking me for a prompt for a particular value to put into the parameter for this sync rule. So I can simply just put in here a hard-coded value, for example, and my query is completed for the sync rule. If I have it set to the param query, and then I go, so if I have the sync rule 1 using the param query, and then I go to delete this param query which is being used, and provided I have the safely delete tick option default to ticked on, when I tried to delete it, the first thing I'll get was a warning to say that this is actually being used. I can still go ahead and delete it by clicking yes. Otherwise I can back out and say, wait a minute, I need to reconsider. So I go back to change that to query 1. Now again I try and delete. Again with the safe delete ticked on, and this time it's safely deleted. Safe delete is a very useful feature to reassure the developer that they're not going to break anything. The sync rule, okay, so the sync rule is being used here, and that's great. So this is how I define my sync rule. How do I use it? Well, we saw a glimpse of it before from Form 1. On Form 1, my synchronize button here is driving an expression button one click. If I double click on that, it'll take me straight to the expression that's being run. So as the comment says there, we're going to run a sync rule on the server. So the first step is to actually enable the sync rule. For every sync rule I have, say I have 3 of them, they're all going to be default disabled or turned off. In the form expression here, I'm going to enable one of them. Then I'm going to show the sync dialog. The sync dialog is the dialog that comes up, that flies up. This is the sync dialog. So it's completed the synchronization one more time. And then just to clean up, I'm going to disable those sync rules that I just enabled. So very quickly and easily, this is how you run a synchronization.